Ladies and gentlemen, I go by the name of Arlo Maverick. I'm a man of many hats who just happens to rap, and today we're talking about management. Now, a lot of times artists will come to me and say, hey, I need a manager. And a lot of times I think what they're actually saying is that they want someone to come in and do the work for them that they don't want to do, so they focus on their art. Now, one thing you got to understand about taking on a manager or soliciting a manager or having someone come in to manage your career is that even though they're coming in to manage your career, that means that you still have more work to do. The work does not stop the moment that you get a manager. The workload actually increases because now you have two people who are working towards a common goal. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind as well too when it comes to seeking out a manager is that you have to ask yourself, are you at this phase or at the stage in your career where you actually require a manager? Because it may seem like a status symbol, or even like, hey, I get to tell everybody I got a manager, and yeah, my manager's handling this, my manager's handling that. But what you have to understand is that that person there is going to want to be compensated for their time. Now, managers may take anywhere from 10 to 15%, and if you don't have 10 or 15% of anything to give somebody, then bringing them aboard to be part of your team may or may not be feasible for you. Now, one thing that you may want to consider doing as an artist is that before you bring somebody in to manage you, is that manage yourself. And what I mean by managing yourself is that look at the roles and duties of a manager and start to ask yourself, am I already doing these things for myself right now? Because if you're not doing these things for yourself right now, when you try to bring in a manager to take on these roles, you'll be asking yourself, well, what is this person doing? But because you don't understand the role of what they're doing, you now think they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, because the role of a manager is not easy. You essentially have to sometimes take a career that has not even begun to flourish and try to make it, try to build it into something. Now, I think that with most artists, one of the misconceptions when it comes to having a manager is that this is someone who's going to come in and do all the work so that you can basically be in the studio, or that you can work on being fashionable and be on your Instagram and so on and so forth. This person is here because there's a mutual benefit for you and for them. They realize that in helping facilitate your career and taking care of the day-to-day activities of getting your career further, they're going to get compensated back for that. Essentially, the moment you acquire a manager, that means that your workload should increase because there's more opportunities being created. But if all of a sudden your manager comes in, you feel that you don't have to do this no more, you don't have to do that no more, then you're missing the point of having a manager. I think a lot of artists fail to realize that in the beginning of your career, you have to create something that is worth managing. If something is not there for them to manage, then what's the point of them being part of what you're doing? Something that every artist should think about before they even decide to get a manager is, do they understand themselves as a brand, and do they understand their music? Because this is something that you're going to have to communicate to the person who you want to manage you. Because no matter how good of a manager someone is, if you don't understand who you are, then it's going to be hard for you to be able to communicate that to the person that you want to manage you. Now, the person who you want to manage you should be someone who is great at problem solving. Should be someone who's able to, someone who's organized, someone who's strategic, someone who you and them have a rapport, and you go back and forth, and they understand you and you understand them. Because if there is no chemistry in that relationship, then it's going to be hard, because you may be thinking one thing, they may be thinking another thing. If this person does not believe in what you're doing or believe in your ideas, then they may not be the right fit. That's not to say your ideas aren't good. That just means that that person there doesn't necessarily understand you or get you. Now, you got to find someone who is going to understand you, someone who's going to make those sacrifices for you to get to where you need to be. But again, just going back to what I said earlier, you have to be prepared to take on that. And you have to be prepared for someone to come in and be able to get that to where it needs to be. If you have outlandish ideas, for example, let's look at Drake. He wanted to be at a certain level. It took him surrounding himself with people who were willing to believe in what he believed in and were willing to work as hard as he was willing to work in order for him to get to where he's at. Now, your manager has to believe in you, and you have to believe in your manager. One thing that's very important with any business relationship is trust. Now, if you don't trust your manager financially, or you don't trust that your manager actually believes in what you're doing, or believes in you as an artist, or believes in your vision, then the relationship is not going to work. The relationship has to be one in which you trust in them and they trust in you. They have to trust that you are working hard every single day to push this thing further. and you have to trust that they are working hard every single day to push this thing further. It can't be a situation where one person is relying on the other person to do one thing. You guys are working as a team. Now, you don't necessarily need to have a manager who has 1,000,001 connections. You just need to have a manager who's willing to speak on your behalf and be able to communicate your needs in the most effective way. If this person who is your manager is someone who is a great communicator, someone who's likable, someone who has charisma and has charm, and so on and so forth, or is an honest person and people like them, then they can go from knowing nobody to all of a sudden becoming someone who everybody knows. Now, at the end of the day, one thing to keep in mind is that every manager had to start somewhere. So even if you can't get Paul Rosenberg to manage you, that doesn't mean that your friend who is taking business, or someone who doesn't even have a background in business, can actually be your manager. In closing, if you found yourself more informed and enlightened by the end of this vlog, then please click like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, which is youtube.com/Arlo Maverick. And if you want to pay this forward by sharing it with somebody, whether it be on Facebook, whether it be on Twitter, or even adding it to a YouTube playlist that you may have in regards to music information, then please do. And yeah, I guess until the next episode,